just jumping right into it, the opener of the main card was Ruffy, however you pronounce it, taking on James Yontop. And really, for me, the story of the night there was that Ruffy was a minus 1,000 favorite. He barely skated by, if we're being completely honest. I mean, round two was all his. He was landing some ridiculously heavy shots that probably knock out 90% of the division. James Yontop has a granite chin, heart of a lion, so he was able to keep coming forward and somehow just kept surviving. But when you look at it, Yontop was winning round one. Ruffy had a big shot landed in the last maybe minute or so of that fight. Had he not landed that big shot, Yontop takes round one. Ruffy definitely takes round two. And then James Yontop comes on in round three. I don't know if Ruffy was just cruising because he thought he was up 2 rounds, but Yontop definitely won round three. So it's a unanimous decision, but it was actually razor thin. And that's James Yontop, supposed to make 155. Couldn't do that, so he calls for a catch weight, and he couldn't even make catch weight. So how hard was this guy actually training? What condition was this guy actually in? And Ruffy goes in there, has some glimpses of being a star, massive offensive potential there for sure, but overall not a great win. So I'm not saying this is a full-on fraud check, but it's definitely got my attention. I'm definitely taking note that Ruffy is kind of low volume. He clearly wants to get that round one knockout highlight on his reel pretty much every time he's in there. He's just setting up for the big kill shot, trying to be as creative as possible. And it just feels like at some point that might catch up to him. Now, maybe he will change his style eventually and mature, but taking away from that fight, Yontop's stock goes up a ton. Ruffy, it probably just stays the same. So I'm keeping an eye on him. It's not a total fraud check just yet, but he is being added to my list. Next fight, and fraud check for days here, Karine Silva. And I said it in my breakdown that Viviana Araujo had the perfect style to win a fight against Karine Silva, who was the much younger fighter, the much more dangerous fighter. But really, the story of that fight was Karine Silva couldn't get the fight to the ground. And without getting the fight to the ground, she kind of looked terrible. And when she was able to get the fight to the ground, you see the glimpses, the submission threats that she has. She did land a couple big shots on the feet, but eventually she just started to gas. In round three, she was just pulling guard, dropping down to her back. She looked terrible. The visualization of her in round three was horrible. She wanted to quit. She wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. So I'm super happy that the judges actually gave Araujo the win, because you probably could have scored that for Karine Silva. It was a pretty close decision. I think it could have went either way, but I'm just very happy that the judges gave this one to Araujo 29-28 across the board. Karine Silva, she's got to figure it out, man. I don't know. She's already 30 years old. She has been killing people left and right, getting round one submission after round one submission. But I said it, hitting this level of competition, that's going to balance out. She's got to learn how to go a heavy 15 minutes. She was on her way to potentially being a championship contender. She can't even go 3 rounds. She can't even go 3 rounds, let alone 5. So Karine Silva really needs to clean it up. Otherwise, she just got fraud checked by a 37-year-old Araujo who's past her prime. She looked good, not that good, but still, Karine Silva needs to figure it out. That's a fraud check. And then the next fight, Bo Nickal taking on Paul Craig. I mean, it's a 30-27, unanimous across the table for Bo Nickal. But that doesn't really tell the entire story. When you actually watch that fight, it's actually funny. By the numbers, Bo Nickal lands 54 significant strikes to Paul Craig's 47. That's how razor thin it was on the feet. 0 takedowns from Paul Craig, 0 takedowns from Bo Nickal. I do think Bo Nickal understood the assignment. If he takes down Paul Craig, you immediately give Paul Craig a chance to win that fight and end the fight at any given point. So credit to Bo Nickal for having the fight IQ to not shoot for takedowns. He probably could have at least mixed in a few of them, but he decided to stand because he knew he would have the striking advantage, and he barely had the striking advantage. And that is sad, because Paul Craig is probably one of the worst. No offense to him. Paul Craig's the man. Submissions for days, but this dude is not known for his striking. Bo Nickal should be finishing that fight, or at least doubling him up on strikes, or at least getting a knockdown. But he landed a few clean shots, but outside of that, I mean, it was very underwhelming. Again, this is a minus 1,300 favorite, and I know people will point to the fact that Bo Nickal just started in MMA. He just started working on his striking. Well, he's 28 years old. He has a few more years to figure it out. I'm still not all that impressed. If this guy's going to hit the top 15 or even the top 10 real soon, he's going to have some problems. So, again, not a total fraud check, but when people are calling Bo Nickal the next guy up, a future champion of this division, we got to give pause a little bit here. We got to just slow it down, pump the brakes just a little bit. Bo Nickal needs to figure out that striking. Now, granted, 9 times out of 10, he can probably out-wrestle anybody, might not need the striking, but if he wants to be a champion one day, he's got to put it all together. So again, this is not a total fraud check, but I am making note of it.